Welcome to the Mason Duchatschek Show. This episode is brought to you by Workforce Alchemy, helping leaders improve hiring, engagement, and retention while uncovering people-related profit leaks hidden in everyday operations. Today's guest is someone I invited very intentionally because his work speaks directly to a challenge that many business owners and CEOs face, but rarely name. Javier Lozano helps founder-led and CEO-led companies turn operational chaos into structure that supports predictable growth. He's the founder of Boulder Media Company and brings more than 20 years of experience leading sales and marketing for B2B organizations. He works as a fractional CMO and CRO, stepping into complex environments where effort is high, but results are inconsistent, and helping leadership teams build disciplined, repeatable growth systems. I'm super happy to have you on today. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Mason. Really appreciate this opportunity. I think we're going to have some fun here.
I do too. So when business leaders say things or feel chaotic, when business leaders say that things feel chaotic, what does that usually look like behind the scenes? And how do you diagnose the difference between, how do I say, maybe healthy growth tension and true operational chaos?
Well, I will say that on the latter part, I think it's all healthy. I think it's important to know that when you're going through growth, that there has to be some sort of chaotic moments and feelings, because then you're not going to know where to put your attention in that. And so I think it's part of it's part of the game. It's part of the process of running a business and starting a business. And so usually what I see when, CEOs or founders have chaotic experiences in their business, it's going to be a lot of different stuff that's fragmented. One of them is that all the department, or let's just call it departments in quotation marks, are all kind of operating in silos. So they all kind of do their own thing, and they're all kind of doing, whatever they're kind of doing there. Like operations does their stuff, marketing does their stuff, sales does their stuff. There's no kind of collaboration on building a go-to-market motion that's sustainable for the entire organization. Another piece that I see sometimes too is it's going to be really like they're trying too many different things. They're trying too many strategies. They're trying to go after too many ICPs. Their audience is too broad. They're going and doing a shotgun approach versus the very narrow kind of like focusing on one specific target. And so they always kind of say, or I hear these kind of terms is like, well, it just seems like nothing's really sticking, or we can't really tell our story, or like no one really understands what we sell, or it's really confusing and complicated. So I would say that's the other part of the chaotic piece of it, because what happens is that sales doesn't really know what to say. Operations is kind of sitting there probably like twiddling their thumbs in a sense of like, when are we going to start getting some business coming in? And marketing is trying to like figure out like, all right, how do I feed sales? How do I tell a story? How do I make my CEO happy? And that's where a lot of that stuff kind of becomes chaotic. So it's not really one thing of like pipeline is not working, or we're not getting any leads. Like, I mean, that's chaotic as well too, but that's kind of where I see that as like they have traction. It's just not really organized.
I see the same stuff on a regular basis. I don't think that what you're describing is uncommon. I think
No, I know.
it's especially now because you've got all this content out there and all these people saying, hey, try this, try that. And it's shiny new object syndrome. So in your experience, what is the first, I'd say, what's the first step in cleaning up the chaos?
It's not to fix everything. It's to step back and see what is working, see what isn't working, and take an analysis. When I go in with engagements with clients, I always do what's called a go-to-market audit. I basically look at what's going on. Like I audit from their website, I audit their positioning strategy, I audit their messaging, and that's what I would do internally if I was coming in as an in-house employee. And I did that in my last role as well too, is I want to audit everything. Like I know a lot of CMOs are like, well, we need to change the website. Don't touch the website. Like just leave the website as it is, because I'm sure there's other things that are more chaotic and crazy going on than just the website. I wouldn't touch a lot of stuff. I would start analyzing, seeing where the traction's going on. I would start interviewing sales teams and be like, hey, whenever you're going through the sales process, what type of leads are you closing really well? Like tell me that experience and walk me through that. And what are the ones that are like, 2 minutes into the conversation, this is like a waste of your time, but you still got to do it. And like, tell me, how that looks like. And
It's
then I
funny you
want to
say that. The co-author
go
of my
ahead.
first book, he retired, but co-author of
Okay.
my first book was Sales Utopia. His name is Alan Minster, and he could do this with a smile and he could pull it off. But he would literally tell people like, "Hey, if this isn't a fit for you, and you feel a no coming on, just tell me. I'm a big boy. It's not gonna hurt my feelings. And
Yeah. Yeah.
frankly, I don't need the practice." He'd tell people, and
Yeah.
he would get out of
I love it.
those meetings quickly.
And
Oh, anyway, go ahead though. I didn't
no,
mean to
no, no,
interrupt.
that's huge because that's I mean, sometimes you just your instincts are going to be right in those instances. And so, my whole point is that I want to take an audit at everything. And that's exactly what I did at my last in-house role is I came in and I was looking at all the stuff that was going on. We were generating 3,000 leads. We were paying like 2, 3, $4 a lead. Most companies like, oh, that's amazing. $2 leads. Like, let's, put our hands up in the air. And then you start lifting look underneath the hood and you're like, okay, wait a second. How many of these are we closing? How many of these people are like, is sales chasing and it's not even like a legitimate opportunity? And we started kind of, unveiling some of this stuff. And like a great example is that for every 100 leads we were generating, about 15 of those were hitting our ICP. So that we were spending 85 of those with all these ad dollars and they were doing nothing for us. So then I started analyzing where these good ones were coming from. They were coming from Meta. And so what we did is we focused on basically moving our ad budget from Google to Meta. And that not only increased like our higher ICP, but then all of a sudden our sales team was actually going after people that were really going to be buyers. Eventually we got to the point where we got for every 100 leads, 95 of them were hitting our ICP. Where I'm coming from with this is that I didn't come to that conclusion on day one. I came to that conclusion on like day 30, day 45, day 60. And it's not that I was slow to it. It's that I was absorbing different things that was working and not working. And really that's the most important part. It's not to go in there and change everything. It's to really double down what you rock in and then say, hey, we're saying no to this because this is not resourceful. It's just it's unreasonable. It's not going to help us, etc.
You're reminding me of a story. A buddy of mine, and this was back in the day when people still advertised for job openings using the newspaper.
Yeah.
And he was in a room full of HR directors, and he ran a company that provided online job online job board, for lack of a better explanation. And he's got hundreds of HR directors in the room, and he says, "What's the worst thing that can happen if you put an ad in the paper for a job opening?" Almost every single one of them said, "Nobody responds."
Mhm.
And you could understand why they would say that because they just spent their money on advertising and didn't get any response. Just like a marketing group could spend money on ads and you don't get any response. He goes, "No, that's the second worst thing that can happen." And everybody's like, "Well, what's worse than spending money on ads and not getting any responses?" He's getting a whole bunch of responses from people who aren't qualified
Yep.
because that sucks up all of your resources and time to produce an outcome that is unusable, i.e., we can't use any of these candidates. Same thing with
Exactly.
sales leads. And that's why I really like what you're saying about the audits and getting some of these people in different silos to talk to each other because that way, because marketing can sit there and say, "Oh, we're doing a great job. Look at all these leads we're getting." And then sales says, "Well, yeah, but
Yep.
it's sucking up all of our time and we don't have anything to show for it. And we've got numbers to hit that we're not hitting."
Exactly.
And now you can collaborate instead of direct blame and point fingers.
And that's one of the reasons why I really believe that marketing needs to own some sort of revenue number, not necessarily like it's their number, but they need to be influencing it in one way, shape, or form. And so it's important that like marketing sees their influence further down pipeline versus at the top. And so that's where, and you can do that by pushing brand. You can do that by pushing demand. It doesn't really matter what direction or what lever you're pulling, but like marketing needs to be influencing revenue in any kind of direction. And it could be down the road 6 months from now, or it can be like tomorrow.
Right. So how do you help leaders move from reacting to problems day to day and shift into building systems that prevent those problems from reoccurring?
So once we kind of do that audit and I look at everything, I want to see where are we getting hung up? Like where are we spending a lot of our time? Are we spending time sending out personalized emails? Are we spending time, on these things? Like where could we leverage automation and where can we, say like, hey, we're gonna do this manually because it's a high touch, high conversion. Like that makes sense. And so that's where I want to kind of find where we can kind of like give back time to other people. So an example is that we had a small sales team, and we had at the time like 2 or 3 people, I believe. And on average, they were doing like 20, maybe 30 deals a month. But we were getting a slew of leads coming in, but they can't, contact every single one of those all the time. So what we did is we created a way of sending out automated emails and text messages coming from their actual Gmail inbox versus like a marketing email that doesn't inbox correctly. This is like as though like they said, "Hey Tom, I saw that you're interested in X, Y, and Z." You know, then that all of a sudden, if they reply back, it's a hand raiser. So instead of them having to call to see if they're interested or catch them at the right moment, that was going out automated, and it was very personal. It wasn't a generic, like, "Hello, Thomas." It was very personal,
Or
that sort of
hello,
stuff.
insert name here. I love
Exactly,
those.
where the token wasn't done correctly. And so like, and I know this doesn't seem like it's like, well, this is not groundbreaking, Javier. Well, here's the difference. Most companies, when they capture a lead, they send out a marketing email. And that's kind of like a standard practice. That inbox is very low rate. It's going to probably hit spam filters. It's going to probably not, hit correctly. If you're able to send out an automated sales-based email, like a transactional email, like as though like you sent me an email the other day to kind of go over what we were going to discuss. If you were able to send that automatically, that's going to inbox higher. And so what we realized is that when we did that, we were getting a 40 to 50% open rate. And so I'm bringing this up because I was saying, okay, how can I give my sales team more time to call the right people versus emailing everybody, calling everybody, and treating everybody as equal? And really, what this did is that it basically said, okay, I'm going to shift time here. And anyone that raises their hand, I'll call those people. And then once I've done all that, then I can put my attention to the others. And so,
I'm gonna piggyback on that.
yeah, yeah,
I interviewed a guy, his name Alan No, spelled NGO, digital solopreneur, I think it was. And he gave me a quote that really rung true because I listened to how you describe how sales reps are going to spend their time with whether it's just responding with an email or whether it's a personal call. He said you treat everybody fairly, but not equally.
yes,
Because some prospects are require much more time and have a much bigger payoff. You
yep,
treat them everybody fairly, but
yep,
someone who is I would say unqualified in terms of can make a decision or can pay for it. Right now, they may be able to be qualified to pay for your service later, but right now they may not be ready to do business with you simply because they can't afford it. Not that they don't want
correct,
to or they're not interested, but you treat them fairly and you provide them with some resources, whatnot that can help them. And when they get there, then you'll be the first one they think of. But what you're talking about, for those listening that didn't catch that episode, this fits hand in glove with what I hear you talking about and what I hear you saying. Treat
100%.
everybody fairly, but not equally. And what you're talking about is building systems that kind of sort, hey, sales team, people at this level, this is how we respond, and we can leverage automation here. Prospects at a higher level, they require phone calls. Prospects at a higher level, they may require invitations to lunch or dinner or special events or things like that.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. And so once you kind of build like that piece of the puzzle or that piece of the engine, it's just about measuring. It's not necessarily measuring back like this is how much, John got back in his day. It has nothing to do with that. It's like, hey, we were able to start pushing these many leads through and they converted at this rate. And then you start tracking that. And then essentially it's just like showing to the founder or CEO, be like, this is what our system has created. And this is how we're able to start creating a repeatable, scalable system that allows us to grow and where we can put $1 in and $8 back. It basically got to the point where when we were running this strategy, we were getting roughly a return on our ad spend, I would say anywhere from 6 to 8, which is insane. I would say on really good campaigns that we would launch occasionally, it was as high as 15. Where I'm coming from with this is that it's not going to be one thing is going to work and it's going to fix everything. It's like taking one piece that is a big bottleneck and seeing where you can find leverage to help you automate and then to help make your team look like just augment their abilities of adjusting or I'm sorry of going after the right kind of clients. And so that's kind of where I see the growth for just creating more of that predictable scalability.
I'm really enjoying this conversation because you're making me think about some things that I hope is helpful to those that are listening. But when you talk about things that you can measure and and you talk about having different departments speak to each other.
Hmm.
I know there are companies listening, people listening who can say, oh, yeah, we need to have the metrics. We need to measure this stuff. But if they don't have people talking, I can give a very personal example. I don't know if it's happened to you. I hope it
Yeah.
hasn't, but it's happened to me on more than one occasion where I will call customer service and I will have a complex problem and I can't get to a live person. And when I do get to a live person, I can tell that they are being evaluated because it says, hey, will you stick around after this call to give us an evaluation?
Hmm.
And so I know that metrics are in place and systems are in place. And there's a boss somewhere looking at the numbers to say, how long did you spend on this call? And were they satisfied? And I
Hmm.
have been on calls that were complex problems and it wasn't going to get taken care of quickly. And they just dumped, knowing that I'm going to get stuck in the queue again. I'm never going to get them again. I'm not going to get to give a bad review. And I'm fair enough that I would never give another person a bad review based on that experience. So the company's sitting there getting this thing, wow, look how efficient this person is. Well, heck, if they're dumping off all of the complex problems and they're making prospects and customers mad, sales might want to know about that. Marketing might want to know about that. So while I guess what I see is multiple things, multiple topics here, where you're talking about, again, the importance of all of these different groups communicating and working together instead of customer servicing. We do customer service, marketing, we do marketing, sales do. They're all part of the customer journey.
Exactly.
And yes, metrics are important and they should be in place. However, in a siloed environment, people can get away with nonsense like that and mistreating. In this case, I was a customer, past
Yep.
tense. I was a
Exactly.
customer and I could get mistreated, and I was, and it's
Yep.
happened on more than one occasion.
Yep.
But in organizations where, like what you're talking about, where there is communication among the silos and they are, instead of being siloed, but they are looking at their organization as different parts of the customer journey that they work together to deliver. And obviously you can have metrics in between. I really think that's the sweet spot, and that's easier said than done.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. I totally agree.
So what are some of the most common random acts of marketing or activity traps that you see companies falling into when structure's missing?
Oh gosh, I come across it all the time. I mean, like I had one engagement where someone's like, "Hey, we're gonna start doing SEO, and that's gonna really help us." And I sit back and I'm like, "So SEO is gonna help solve the problem of lead quality or like more leads?" Yes, that's what we're missing. So like, interesting. I didn't know that. Or it's, "Oh, I heard so and so is running ads. My friend is running ads on Meta, and it's doing really well. We're gonna do the same thing. That's our strategy." Okay, that's great. And so what it is that they're picking tactics and they're making them strategic. And so I'm not saying that SEO doesn't work. I'm not saying that paid doesn't work. I'm not saying that organic content doesn't work. Like they all work in their own right ways. You know, they're very good. But those are the random acts of marketing where they're like, I saw someone doing this, or I heard this on a podcast. And hopefully someone doesn't take this podcast and say, I heard this in this podcast and I'm going to do what he just said. Like you want to do that, but you've got to also take I'm going to say this again, take a step back and look at it from a very holistic point of view. And what is the ultimate goal? So instead of saying, these random acts of marketing of what you're just going to be doing, what are we trying to achieve? And just work your way backwards from there. So like, yes, I know we're trying to get more sales. Like, yes, we all understand that. That's why we're running a business. But let's get deeper into this. Like, what kind of sales are we trying to get? What kind of customers are we trying to put into our pipeline? Like, what does that look like? Okay, great. Now that we have figured out the kind of customers that we're wanting, like, where do they typically hang out? Are they usually on this platform? Are they usually like this? Like, where can we find them? Okay, excellent. Now we have an idea where they're hanging out. Now, what resonates with them? Like what are their pain points? What pisses them off every time they see something like this? Or and how can we agitate that so then they want to take action? They're like, we can't do this, we can't let this ever happen. And so then how do you provide a solution for them that's going to solve that problem that they're facing? But what I'm getting to is you're working yourself backwards on this whole thing as opposed to like, we just need more revenue. I mean, that's like saying, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, I'm sorry to say this, but it's like saying the Cleveland Browns are going to go win the Super Bowl next year. Like that's what their goal is. Like maybe we should just be like, hey, you know what? We should just have a winning record. Let's just go for a winning record, and we're moving progress into a certain direction. Am I saying revenue is not is a bad goal? No, but it's like how we generate that revenue is really important.
Like, for example, you might say, instead of I want more leads, No, I want to know how I can attract more of our exact ideal customers and actually repel the wrong ones.
Correct. And that's huge. Like it may seem as though it's like, well, that doesn't really resonate to revenue. Well, no, it does if you have all these other systems lined up correctly. If you have your pipeline built out where when a lead comes in, they get this kind of messaging and they get this kind of contact. And if nothing happens after X amount of days, they either get recycled or they get put into another thing, but they're always getting touched in one way. Something is going on. It's just not like a lead dying on a vine. There is a process behind this entire journey, and we all know that not every lead's going to convert as soon as they come in because they can buy 3 months from now, they can buy 12 months from now, but it doesn't mean they were a bad lead. It was just timing. And so you're building this out for like the long play. You're not building it out for just today. You're building it out for a year from now.
Right. So, how do you bring structure to organizations? Because I'm trying to imagine that there's got to be some resistance. There's always resistance to change, but the resistance, like, well, hey, if we do all this, it's really going to slow the business down. How do you respond to people who would have that concern that, well, what we're doing right now, we've got to keep up the momentum. We've got to keep driving forward. We don't really have time to slow down for this structure stuff.
Yeah. So really it's not slowing down. All you're doing is you're doubling down on what's working, and then you're essentially creating a strategy around that, and then you're removing the things that isn't working. So it doesn't mean that you stop everything and then you just like, okay, we're going to start from zero again. No, like if let's just say like you have, I don't know, 3 go to market motions that are working very well, and one of them is crushing it, the other 2 is kind of like, it's okay. We're not going to change one. We're just going to leave that as is right now. And we might like tweak things at different stages, but we're just going to kind of keep riding that and try to see how we can optimize, go to market one. And then maybe 2 and 3, we might say, okay, we can't focus on both of them. Let's focus on one of these 2 that we think that we can probably create some sort of structure around it. So I don't necessarily think it's slowing down. It's more of optimization. And optimization doesn't necessarily mean you stop everything. Optimization just says that you keep evaluating pipeline, you keep evaluating how what you've designed is working, and then you start creating metrics to measure from that. So like you say, hey, we're going to do this. We haven't changed a whole bunch. We're going to run this for 3 months. We're going to measure it. Okay. And we're anticipating that this is going to happen. Like, it's going to probably increase our close rate by 20%. This is what we're hoping for by us doing better emails and better targeting and, something else better. Right. And we believe that by doing this, our close rate is going to increase and we're going to have a higher quality of like SQLs as an example. And we measure that, and we could be wrong. It could be completely like, well, didn't work, let's go back to the drawing board. Or it could be like, oh, interesting. When we did this, this, and this increased. Okay, perfect. All right. So now how do we grow that and make it more predictable again? How do we continue to add more fuel to that fire? So when leaders kind of bring that up, it's just reinforcing like we're not stopping what's working. We're just optimizing the areas that make the most sense.
So I'm listening to this, and I think I know how you're going to answer it. But for those that are listening, that might be deep down saying, "Hey, I really like what he's saying. It makes sense." But deep
Mhm.
down, they're worried that structure will kill creativity or agility. And they're probably thinking, well, this structure sounds great, but I don't want a bunch of robots. I don't want this to be a machine.
Mhm.
How do you address that?
Structure is actually amazing because that creates a foundation. It creates a baseline of what you can do at all times. And creativity is always going to be there as long as you know that you have the foundation of what's working. And so, how I would address this is like, hey, we want to create a baseline that allows us to be creative. So, let's say that we know that this go to market is going to be producing 70% of our revenue, and we can trust that, going in and out day after day, our sales team, even our worst salesperson can close this deal because we have the right things going on. It's structured correctly. Does that mean that we stop being creative in the marketplace? No. What that means is that we are going to have a baseline. And so when we try something new, maybe it's a new ad creative, maybe it's a new angle, maybe it's a new widget or a feature, whatever that is going to kind of like test the market and see what responds. We measure off that baseline. We
Love
say,
that.
hey,
There's that old saying that if you don't have a standard, you can't measure the deviation.
correct. And so it's this goes back to the whole, random acts of marketing. Like, well, let's just try this and let's just try that. Like, I can tell you right now, the best chefs in the world aren't just like, let's do a little bit of salt here and a little bit of paprika over there and throw some cumin in this. And like there is a science to it and there's an art to it. Don't get me wrong, but there is also structure in how they do it. Like they cook the steak a certain way at a certain temperature until it hits a certain degree. They season it and they let it rest for a certain amount of time. Like that's structure. Does that mean that they can't change the flavor of the steak or how they present the steak? No. That's just what I would call is like table stakes. Like this is what we do to play the game, and then everything else is going to allow us to see how we can actually be different and stand out from everybody. So you don't want to lead with this whole like, well, we have to be creative. That's just kind of what we do. There's nothing, it's not taken away from your creativity. If anything, not having structure is going to hinder your creativity because you're now concerned on trying to hit goals that you have no idea what your baseline was.
So, what metrics or leading indicators matter most when you're trying to replace chaos with predictability?
And this is the part that I think every marketer is going to start, arguing, but you've got to look at the vanity metrics, because those vanity metrics is a directional view of what the lagging indicators are going to be. So how I look at it is like, if you're going to run a new campaign, you've got to say, okay, well, the goal here is to increase, and you got to make some, whatever those things are. It can be impressions, it can be website visits, it can be, new leads. It can be whatever you want those to be, but it has to be tied with what that campaign goal is. And you have to have the understanding of like, hey, this is more for impressions. We're not looking to get leads. We're trying to see if we can get some sort of signals from the marketplace to tell us if this is the right direction we're going to go. And so sometimes impressions or visits is the leading indicator, okay? Because that's a signal for the next goal. So of the next campaign that you're going to be building from there. It's not one thing. It just depends on what you're trying to build and what you need to measure for that. But you can't go into like I'll go back to the chef thing. You can't use the same measurement of like how you would measure a savory meal versus a sweet meal. They're two different things. Like you like they're going to have different flavor profiles. They're going to have different kind of how they're approached and presented. Like it's the same concept with marketing. And so as you're building out your strategy, you just got to know like, hey, we're going to be measuring these metrics that are going to be more of our leading indicators. We know the goal is to increase our qualified leads and our close one rate. We understand that. But what we believe is that if we're able to do this, this will eventually influence this piece of our puzzle. And if we can close the gap and maybe shorten the sales cycle a little bit by doing this, then all of a sudden we have more cash flow coming in. Like it just depends on how we're trying to like approach the strategy.
If a business owner feels overwhelmed right now, what's
Mhm.
one simple step that they could take this quarter to begin creating some structure instead of just coping with the chaos that typically exists?
Yeah. So I would say find where your one bottleneck is. Okay. Whatever it is, maybe your close rate's below 25% as an example. Like you're getting leads, they're getting pushed to SQL. They're like, oh man, these are pretty decent, but we're closing below 25%. Okay. Then we need to go back and we need to look what's going on here. And this is not a sales problem. It can be like, hey, sales, do you not have enough enablement that's going to help you close these opportunities? Are there things going on? Listen to sales calls. Listen to how why these are not getting closed. Like get all that data and understand what's happening. So I'd find that one bottleneck, whatever it is, and just really put your attention on seeing how you can actually unlock that piece, because we all have them. I mean, I've seen them at my last role, like where I saw them, like we had like great, movement, and then there was a bottleneck in one stage. And it was and so we would put attention into how can we unlock this one particular stage of that pipeline. Now, does that mean that we're going to be increasing our ad spend? No. Does that mean that we're going to lose deals? No. It just means that we're going to try to find a way how we unlock this stage right here. Does it mean that we have to have better emails? Does it mean that we have to have more follow-ups? Does it mean that we have to have better enablement? It could be a variety of those things, but that's what it is. And then you just measure that piece. So it's not boiling the ocean. It's literally warming up a cup of coffee. Find one thing that it's broken and just address that.
So, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to business owners right now, of all the advice that you have, what's the
Mhm.
single most important piece of advice you'd give to business owners right now?
That's a good one because there's so many. So the one thing I would say is when you're leading your team, go in and understand that you're going to have to pivot. Your strategy that you have today may not be the one that gets you to the next goal tomorrow. And quite frankly, by you pivoting is not a bad thing. It's just telling you the market doesn't want that. the market's going to tell you what is really important to them. So listen to your market. So to go in there with like, hey, this is what we believe. We believe this is what they want. And then all of a sudden they're saying, no, we don't want this, guys. We want, this, and this. Okay, excellent. We're going to adjust and give them exactly that. And then we're going to keep measuring. But what happens is that sometimes business leaders get married to a concept of like, well, no, this is how we need to do it because no one else is doing this. And I get that, but
Sometimes
the market,
there may be a reason no one else is doing that.
exactly. And so like the market is the market is the market. Like let the market determine what good is and what bad is. And so I'll add one more piece of advice on this is that ship as much as you can. So even if it's at 70%, 80%, ship it. Doesn't have to be perfect, ship it. And the more shipment you put out there, the more feedback you get from the market to tell you what direction to go. And so that's, in my opinion, is what smaller teams can do versus larger teams. Larger teams, they have to have things at like 100%. Smaller teams are like, Sally sent that too soon, but oh well, and it's okay. But let the market determine the quality of that, and then you just start adjusting for that. So shipping quickly, shipping often, and being able to pivot and not being married with what you're trying to wedge in there.
Perfection gets in the way of progress, and excellent now is better than perfect never.
Yep.
If someone does something that's 90% of perfection and they can get it done and help
Yep.
a customer, help a prospect versus someone that doesn't do anything because it wasn't perfect yet, not hard to figure out. I
Yeah.
really appreciate your wisdom, your insights. If people want to know more about you, your company, the work you do, tell us all how to interact with you and learn more.
Yeah. So I'm most active on LinkedIn. So I believe I'm the only Javier Lozano Jr. on LinkedIn. So type my name in there, you'll find me. And then you can also go to my website. You can go to bouldermediasolutions.com. I've got a free gift on there as well too. It's a pipeline diagnostic. It takes like 15 minutes. It's a self-assessment for you to kind of go through where you would probably find some of the leaky parts of your pipeline where you're missing out on revenue. And you can go in, you get a score, and then it gives you the focus of where to put your attention on what to fix, going back to what we were just discussing earlier. And so I love this because what it does is that instead of saying like, hey, we got to do all these things to fix, we focus on one thing. We're looking for one victory. That is it. And so that's kind of, the two places that you can find me on LinkedIn, my website. Send me a DM. I'm happy to communicate and help people out. I always want to be a resource to other folks.
It's been a pleasure having you on, and let's do this again sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Mason.
Thanks so much. You did great.